I never thought my own family would just leave me behind like that. But the morning I woke up alone in the woods, with all their stuff gone and only a note telling me to keep walking, I knew my life had just split into a before and an after. It took me 2 whole days to crawl back home, and the moment I walked through that door, I made a promise to myself. They'd never call that house their home again. But let me back up. My name's Evelyn Carter, and the day this all started felt normal at first. I opened my eyes expecting to see Frank digging through the cooler or Lisa pouring cereal for Maya. Instead, the campsite looked like someone had ripped it apart in a hurry. The fire pit was cold, the tent I'd shared with Frank was collapsed, and every single backpack was gone. My stomach dropped. I called out Lisa, Frank, but nothing answered me except the quiet trees. I thought maybe they'd gone to the car, but when I reached the spot where our SUV had been parked, all that was left were tire tracks. My throat felt dry as sand. That's when I noticed a folded piece of paper weighed down by a rock near the fire pit. I grabbed it, hoping for answers. It was Lisa's handwriting. Just 2 words. Keep walking. That was it. No, we'll be back. No explanations, just those words that made my skin crawl. I tried to convince myself there had to be some reason. An emergency, maybe. But then I spotted Frank's old blue baseball cap under a bush. He wore it every single day. The front of it was smeared with something dark, and I prayed it wasn't blood. My hands shook as I picked it up, remembering how just last night he'd kissed me on the forehead before bed. The silence pressed in on me as I whispered their names again, but still no reply. I searched the flattened tent, hoping to find water or a flashlight, but it was completely empty. My mouth felt like cotton. I knew standing there wouldn't help, so I forced myself to move. I stuffed the note into my jacket and started walking the same trail we'd hiked the day before. With every step, I tried to keep calm, counting numbers in my head so I wouldn't break down. Every few minutes I looked back, half expecting them to pop out laughing, telling me this was all some stupid prank. But the campsite just stayed empty. About 10 minutes in, I noticed the ground ahead looked disturbed. Twigs snapped, leaves pushed aside, almost like someone wanted to leave a trail. I followed it. My mind kept replaying the last few weeks. Lisa barely talking to me, Frank trying to smooth things over, but still acting tense, saying this trip would clear the air. I never imagined that meant leaving me stranded. The path wound past, a spot where Maya and I had eaten sandwiches the day before. Thinking about her pink lunchbox with the stickers she was so proud of made my throat tighten. I just kept hoping she was safe. My legs burned with every step, but standing still felt worse than moving forward. Then, I spotted something tangled in the branches up ahead, a piece of Maya's baby blanket. She still slept with it sometimes, though she'd pretend she was too old for it. It was damp from dew, but no blood, no damage, that should have made me feel better, but instead it felt like a message, like someone wanted me to see it. I tucked the blanket into my pocket and kept going, my chest heavy with memories. Lisa used to call me every day after Maya was born. She once told me she couldn't imagine raising her daughter without me, and now, she couldn't even leave me a proper explanation. My thoughts started spiraling. What if this wasn't just them leaving? What if it was punishment for something I didn't even know I'd done? What if they were blaming me for things I didn't even know I'd done? The thought hit me so hard my head spun. I sat down on a flat rock, pressing my fingers to my temples, trying not to cry. I needed to save my energy, not waste it falling apart. I dug through my jacket pockets, praying I'd forgotten a protein bar somewhere in there, but they were empty. That's when it hit me. This wasn't an accident. Nothing had been left behind, not even by mistake. My family knew I struggled to walk long distances. They knew my phone battery barely lasted. And yet, they took everything I'd need to make it back easily. The panic rising in my chest felt like a wave, but I forced it back down. I couldn't break now. I pushed myself up and kept walking. About an hour later, the trail curved, and that's when I froze. Propped against a fallen log was Maya's little blue backpack, the one with her initials stitched on the front. My heart leaped as I rushed over, unzipping it with shaking hands, hoping for food, water, something. But inside wasn't Maya's stuff. It was mine. My reading glasses, the gold locket Frank gave me for our anniversary, even a roll of medical tape I always carried in my purse. Someone had gone through my belongings, pulled them out, and stuffed them here. I didn't know whether to feel angry or terrified. Why take everything, vanish without a word, and then leave pieces of me behind like some twisted breadcrumb trail. My chest tightened, my hands shook so badly, I almost dropped the bag. That's when I heard it. A whisper, so soft I thought I'd imagined it. I held my breath. Then it came again, floating through the trees like smoke. You shouldn't have come back. My heart slammed so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. I spun around, searching the trail, but there was no one. Nothing, just shadows and silence. My mouth went dry as sand, and every nerve in my body screamed run. But I didn't run. I clutched Maya's backpack to my chest and forced myself forward, step by step. Something deep inside me knew that whoever whispered wasn't there to help me. Every time I glanced behind me, I imagined someone standing there, just out of sight, watching. My pulse hammered so loud it drowned out the forest around me. Still, I walked, whispering Maya's name under my breath like a prayer, because stopping felt like giving in to something I didn't understand, and I wasn't ready to do that. The trail stretched on, and my body begged me to stop, but I pushed through. My legs felt like lead, my throat burned from thirst. To distract myself, I kept turning over the cracks I'd ignored at home. Frank sneaking away for phone calls he wouldn't explain. Lisa avoiding my eyes, like she had a secret she couldn't carry much longer. Even Maya, too quiet lately, her eyes flicking between us like she knew more than she should. I thought, back to our last meal at the fire, Lisa, pushing beans around her plate. Frank staring at the dirt, no one answering when I asked if everything was okay. At the time, I told myself it was just family tension. Now, every step I took made it clearer. They'd planned this. I had to rest. My knees ached so bad I lowered myself onto the ground and unzipped Maya's backpack again, desperate for anything I'd missed. And there, tucked between my glasses and the locket, was one of Lisa's hair ties. That tiny, ordinary thing hit me harder than the rest. Proof she'd touched this bag. Proof she'd chosen what to leave. My chest caved in, and I couldn't stop wondering, was she crying when she did it? Angry, relieved to be rid of me. My hand trembled as I zipped the bag shut, but I stood again. Whatever this was, whatever they thought they were doing, I wasn't going to lie down and let it happen. I walked on, memories rushing in with every heavy step. Lisa calling me in the middle of the night when Maya had a fever, Frank making coffee just the way I liked it. All the small kindnesses that now felt paper thin. After what felt like hours, the trail widened. Off to the side, something caught my eye. A plastic bag with a torn label, sitting on top of a flattened cardboard box. It didn't belong there. I spotted something on the ground and hurried toward it, hoping it was another note, but when I picked it up, I realized it was a half-full bag of trail mix. Just seeing food made my stomach twist with hunger. I ripped it open and ate a handful, trying not to wonder why it had been left there. Deep down, I knew someone wanted me to keep going. Every little thing I found felt like a breadcrumb, pulling me farther into the woods, and honestly, I didn't see another option. My legs shook as I forced myself to keep moving. A little farther on, the path split into two. I froze, not sure which way to go. My eyes scanned the trees for a clue, anything. That's when I noticed a strip of blue cloth snagged on a branch. It was the same color as the shirt Frank had been wearing. My stomach dropped, but I followed it. The thought of choosing the wrong path made my head spin. By now my mind was playing tricks. Every few minutes I thought I heard footsteps behind me, but each time I turned, there was nothing. I kept moving anyway, because I knew if I stopped, the fear would swallow me whole. My body was so tired I almost didn't care anymore until I saw someone up ahead. A man. He was crouched near a fallen log, digging through a big canvas bag. At first, relief rushed through me. I wasn't alone anymore. I almost called out, but something stopped me. He looked up suddenly, and I saw he was holding a camera with a long lens. His clothes were dull, made for blending into the woods. He had a short beard and deep lines around his eyes, like someone who spent years squinting in the sun. When he saw me, he didn't look surprised, just cautious. I stepped closer, forcing my voice to stay steady. "Excuse me, sir. I need help. My family is missing." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he slid the camera back into his bag and slowly stood, studying me like he was deciding if I was real or just some problem he didn't want. Finally, he spoke. "You shouldn't be out here alone." His voice was flat, but not unfriendly. Tears stung my eyes. After more than a day of silence, hearing another person's voice almost broke me. "I don't have a choice," I said. "They left me, my husband, my daughter, my granddaughter, they're all gone. He looked past me, as if expecting someone to appear. Then he sighed. I'm Jake. I'm a photographer. I know these woods. You need food and water. My chest loosened a little. Please, I whispered. Anything. I've been walking for hours. Jake unzipped his bag and handed me a bottle of water and a pack of jerky. My hands shook as I took them, and I tried not to cry as I ate. He just watched me, his expression hard to read. When I finished, he said, "You can come with me. I've got a camp about an hour from here." I wanted to believe him, to feel safe, but the way he kept glancing down the trail behind me made my stomach knot. I thought about the clues, the whispers, the note that told me to keep walking. Did he know something? Was he part of this? Still, I couldn't survive alone without supplies. So, I nodded. All right, I'll come. Jake didn't smile. He just turned and started walking, and I followed, clutching Maya's little backpack to my chest. As we moved, he asked questions when I'd last seen them, where we camped, if they'd left me any message. I told him everything, but I kept watching his face, hoping for a sign he recognized something. When I mentioned the note that said, "Keep walking," he froze mid-step and looked at me sharply. "They wrote that?" he asked, like it meant more to him than he wanted to admit. "Yes," I said quietly. "In my daughter's handwriting." He didn't respond. He just turned away and started walking faster, and I had to push myself to keep up. Every time I slowed, he glanced back, impatient. Finally, we reached his camp. A tarp stretched between two trees. A little metal stove sat on a square of plywood. It looked lived in. Jake gestured for me to sit, then unpacked more supplies. I noticed how he scanned the trees again before settling down, like he was expecting someone or hiding from them. He gave me another bottle of water, and I drank it slowly, my mind racing. Part of me wanted to trust him, to believe I'd finally found someone who could help me escape this nightmare. But the way he kept checking the woods made my skin prickle. After a few minutes, Jake broke the silence. His voice was low, serious. "I don't know how to tell you this, but people disappear in these woods more often than you think. Sometimes they come back, sometimes they don't." The hair on my arms stood on end. "What are you saying?" I asked. He shook his head. "I'm saying you need to be careful who you trust." My heart hammered. I wanted to press him, to make him explain, but before I could, he turned away and busied himself with his camera gear. I sat there, clutching Maya's backpack, my whole body buzzing with unease. I knew I couldn't stay here forever, but I also knew I wasn't strong enough to leave just yet. I told myself I'd rest for a little while before figuring out my next move. Jake didn't say much, just worked quietly with his gear while I tried not to think about how lonely I still felt, even with someone close by. As the sun dipped lower, I had no idea what time it was. Finally, Jake spoke. "Get some sleep," he said. "Tomorrow we'll see if we can find them." I wanted to ask if he'd keep watch, but the look on his face made me swallow the question. He spread out a thin mat for me, and I curled up on it, hugging Maya's backpack tight against my chest. I tried to pretend this was temporary, that I'd wake up in the morning and realize it had all been some awful misunderstanding. My last thought before sleep pulled me under was terrifying. Maybe I didn't even want to see my family again, after what they'd done. When I woke hours later, my mouth tasted sour and dry. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then I looked around and froze. Jake was gone. The tarp he'd tied up flapped lightly in the breeze. His bag was missing. My heart slammed in my chest as panic shot through me. I scrambled to my feet, dizzy, searching for any sign of him. That's when I noticed the footprints in the dirt, fresh enough that I could see the tread marks. My hand shook as I grabbed Maya's backpack, shoved the half-empty water bottle inside, and followed. I couldn't sit there hoping he'd come back. He'd left me once. He could leave me forever. Every step I took, my legs felt like they might give out, but I kept my eyes glued to the ground, tracing each footprint. My mind replayed everything Jake had said, especially how he'd reacted when I told him about the note. Keep walking. He had known something. I was sure of it. And now, memories of Frank and Lisa twisted inside me like knives. Frank telling me to pack extra clothes I never saw again. Lisa casually asking if I'd updated my will, saying it was just in case. I'd laughed then. Now it made me sick. What if this had all been planned? After what felt like an hour of walking, the trail dropped into a shallow hollow. That's when I saw Lisa's hiking boot lying in the grass. Laces knotted like it had been yanked off in a rush. My throat closed. My first instinct was to run to it, but I forced myself to scan the trees first, making sure I wasn't walking into something worse. When I finally picked it up, my stomach twisted. The sole was clean except for a smear of something dark near the heel, mud, or blood. I couldn't tell, and not knowing was almost worse. I tucked the boot under my arm and kept moving, following the footprints as they veered down a side trail. My heartbeat thundered so loud it drowned out everything else. About 20 yards in, I stumbled across a wooden sign, half buried in leaves. Most of the letters had been scratched away, but I could still read part of it. Station, hope, flared in me, sharp and desperate. A ranger station, maybe help. I pushed forward, each step heavier than the last, until the trees opened to reveal a small wooden building with faded paint and a sagging porch. Relief hit me so hard I almost cried. I rushed up the steps and tried the door. Locked. My fists pounded against the wood. Hello, is anyone inside? At first, nothing. My chest sank. Maybe it had been abandoned for years. Then I heard the scrape of a latch. The door creaked open just a few inches, and a man's face appeared in the gap. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 30s, with sandy hair and tired eyes. His gaze flicked from my face to the boot under my arm, then to the child's backpack I carried. "Can I help you?" he asked cautiously. "I'm Evelyn Carter," I said, my voice trembling. "My family is missing. I've been out here for 2 days. I found this boot. Please, can you help me?" He hesitated, studying me like he wasn't sure if I was telling the truth. Finally, he opened the door wider. "Come inside," he said. I stepped past him into the cramped ranger station. It smelled faintly of old coffee, like the kind that had been sitting too long. He gestured toward a chair. "Sit down. My name's Cole, Ranger Cole." I collapsed into the chair, my whole body sagging with exhaustion. For the first time in days, I wasn't completely alone. Cole pulled a metal thermos from a shelf and poured water into a paper cup, handing it to me. Drank half in one swallow, trying not to break down right there in front of him. "Can you call someone?" I asked, my voice shaking. "I don't know where they went. I think someone's been leaving things for me to find. It doesn't feel like an accident." He rubbed a hand across his jaw, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "You said your family disappeared." "Yes," I whispered. "Frank Carter, my husband, Lisa, my daughter, and my granddaughter, Maya." He nodded slowly, reached for a clipboard, and set it on the desk. "I'll need you to describe them. Names, ages, details, anything you remember from the last time you saw them." My hands shook as I listed everything: Frank's tall frame, Lisa's blonde hair, Maya's doll. She never went anywhere without Cole. Scribbled notes, then flipped through a folder, his eyes scanning. Suddenly, his expression changed, tight, uneasy, like he'd seen something he wasn't supposed to. "I'm going to be honest with you," he said finally. "This area has a history. Families have gone missing out here before." My stomach dropped. "What are you talking about?" He turned the folder toward me. My breath caught in my throat. It was a grainy photocopy of a photograph. Lisa. She was standing near a crooked wooden fence, one hand resting on a dog's head. She looked exhausted but alive. The photo looked recent. "Where did you get this?" I demanded. He hesitated. "It came through a tip line about a week ago. No return address. It was marked confidential." My hands went cold. "That's my daughter. Why didn't anyone tell me?" He looked away. "Because your Namond, your husbands, were redacted in the incident file." "I don't know why." I stared at him, dread flooding through me. "You mean someone erased our names on purpose?" "It looks that way." My head spun. Frank's secret phone calls, Lisa avoiding my questions, the way they'd all gone along with the camping trip so easily. Had they already known what was coming? I swallowed hard. I found a note. It said, "Keep walking. I think they want me to go somewhere." Cole frowned, then went to a cabinet. He pulled out a map, spread it across the desk, and pointed to a faded boundary line. "There's an old property here. Some locals say a group squats out there. They call themselves the Resurgence, mostly survivalist types. I can't prove it, but there are rumors they pressure families to disappear." My mouth felt dry again. "Why my family?" "I don't know," he said quietly. "But if they're involved, you need to be careful." My palms were slick with sweat. "I can't leave without finding them." Cole held my gaze. "I won't force you to leave. But you shouldn't do this alone." I gripped the desk, fighting the wave of panic rising in me. I don't trust anyone anymore. He looked pained but didn't argue. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then he slid the map closer. If you want to keep going, there's an old trailhead here. Some abandoned structures are marked. You might find something. I folded the map carefully and tucked it into Maya's backpack. My voice was barely steady when I whispered, "Thank you." He looked like he wanted to stop me, but he only nodded. Before I turned to leave, I asked, "Why was Lisa with the dog in that picture?" Cole's jaw tightened. The note that came with it said, "She knows." That's all. My stomach lurched. I couldn't ask more, not yet. So I walked out, gripping the boot in one hand and the map in the other, forcing my legs to keep moving. Lisa's tired face haunted me. The way her hand had rested on the dog's head like she was holding on to the only comfort she had left. Part of me wanted to believe they'd been forced to leave me behind, but another part knew too much of this felt planned. I didn't know which truth would hurt more. All I knew was that I wasn't stopping until I had an answer. The trail marker Cole had pointed out was about a mile from the station, and I counted every single step like it was the only thing keeping me steady. Every now and then, I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see Jake or maybe some stranger following me, but there was nothing, just the same lonely path stretching behind me. The whole way, I couldn't stop thinking about that photo of Lisa with the dog and those words on the back. She knows. I kept replaying every conversation we'd had in the past few months, trying to figure out what she might have known that was serious enough to wipe our names from a record or drag us out here just to disappear. My mind kept going back to the night she called me crying, whispering that she couldn't do it anymore. When I asked her what she meant, she hung up. Back then, I thought she was just exhausted, burnt out from work and tired of Maya and Frank always stepping in. But now I wondered, had she been trying to confess something much bigger? The thought made my throat tighten. I blinked hard, trying to keep myself from breaking down. When I reached the fork in the trail, where the old property line started, I pulled out the map. My finger traced over the faded lines Cole had shown me. Near a shallow dip was a note that read, "Underground entrance unconfirmed." Just seeing those words made my stomach twist, but I also knew it was the only real clue I had. I folded the map, stuffed it into Maya's backpack, and gripped the straps before heading down the left fork. The trail got so narrow in spots that I had to turn sideways, brushing through branches that scratched up my arms. By the time I pushed through, my skin was raw, but I didn't care. My whole body felt like it was running on pure desperation. After nearly 40 minutes of struggling over rocks and uneven ground, I spotted what looked like a collapsed shed just off the trail. The roof was caved in, but the walls were still standing. My heartbeat jumped. If anyone had been living out here, this was exactly the kind of place they'd hide. I forced myself closer, scanning the ground. Right near the door were boot prints, big ones, not Jake's, and fresh enough to make my pulse hammer harder. My hands shook as I stepped inside. At first it looked abandoned, broken crates, a rusted lantern, dust everywhere. But when my eyes adjusted, I noticed something strange. In the corner, the floor had been cleared, and there was a square piece of plywood that didn't match the rest. I crouched down, touched the edge, and it lifted easily. Underneath was a dark opening, just wide enough for someone to climb through. The smell that rose up was stale, like old paper mixed with metal. Every part of me screamed to turn back, but my body kept moving. I slid Lisa's boot to the side, grabbed the edge until splinters dug into my palms, and lowered myself into the hole. The drop wasn't far. When my shoes hit the ground, I froze and listened. Nothing, just silence. I fumbled for the small flashlight I'd taken from the ranger station. Thank God I had grabbed it and flicked it on. The beam cut across the room. That's when I saw them. The walls were covered in wooden boards, and on those boards were yellowed newspaper clippings and dozens of Polaroid photos. I stepped closer, my breath catching. Every photo was of families, sometimes smiling, sometimes just going about their day, but all of them looked like they'd been taken without permission, as if someone had been spying. I forced myself to keep looking, even though my stomach was in knots. Then I froze. Right in the middle, at eye level, was a picture of me. I was sitting on my back porch, folding laundry. I remembered that exact day I'd been talking to Frank about taking Maya to the aquarium. Lisa was upstairs. Whoever had taken that picture had been close. Close enough that none of us even noticed. My stomach turned. I moved the flashlight lower and saw another photo. This one of Frank standing in the driveway, staring at his phone. My hand shook so badly I almost dropped the light. At that moment, I knew this wasn't some random squatter's hideout. Someone had been watching us. Watching us for a long, long time. I turned slowly, shining the light around the room. In the far corner was a crate stacked with binders. Each one had names and dates written on the cover. I pulled the top one out, flipped it open, and scanned the pages. Some were just lists of times and locations. But others had words I didn't understand. Phrases like conditioned compliance, secured, and primary subject unaware. And that's when the real fear hit me. I realized we weren't just being watched. We were part of something much bigger. I read those words again and again, hoping they'd change, hoping they didn't mean what I thought. But deep down, I knew. Frank had known. Lisa had known. That's why they'd been so tense, why they'd kept looking at me like they were waiting for something terrible to happen. My hands shook so badly I had to shut the binder before I made myself sick. My throat felt raw, and only then did I realize I was making this broken half-crying sound. I couldn't stop. I forced myself to breathe, to stand straighter. Falling apart here wasn't an option. I grabbed the flashlight and turned toward the narrow passageway that stretched deeper into the bunker. My gut screamed at me to turn back, but I couldn't not now. My hand slid along the wall for balance as I walked. The floor sloped down, and I noticed the boards under my feet looked newer, as if someone had reinforced them recently. At the end of the passage, I stepped into another room, smaller than the first. Against the far wall sat a low table. On it was an old voice recorder, the same kind Frank used to carry when he traveled. My heart pounded as I reached for it, fingers clumsy. I pressed play. Static hissed. Then his voice, Frank's voice, came through, low and tired. "If you're hearing this, it means you didn't do what they asked. Evelyn, I'm sorry. I thought I could protect you, but they made it clear. If you didn't disappear, they'd take Maya. They have leverage. I can't say more. Just know, I tried." The recording clicked off, leaving a silence so heavy, it felt like it was pressing me into the floor. My knees buckled, and I had to lean on the table to keep from collapsing. My husband had known. He'd helped them. His words, "I tried," ran through my head over and over, like that was supposed to make any of this forgivable. I don't know how long I stood there, breathing hard, fighting the urge to scream. At last, I shoved the recorder into Mia's backpack and turned to leave. But as I reached the doorway, my flashlight flickered. I smacked it against my palm until the light steadied, but, in that split second of darkness, I had seen movement at the far end of the passage, a human shape, shifting in the shadows. My chest seized, and for a second I couldn't move. Then, the beam steadied, and the space was empty again. Had I imagined it, or was someone really there? Either way, I wasn't about to find out. I scrambled back up the passage, slipping on the boards, dragging myself out of the hatch with splinters digging into my palms. I grabbed Lisa's boot, slammed the plywood shut, and staggered away from the shed, pushing through the brush until it was hidden behind me. My whole body was shaking so hard I could barely hold the backpack. I didn't know who to trust anymore. But Frank's recording told me one thing: Lisa hadn't vanished because she wanted to. She'd done it because she thought it was the only way to save her daughter, which meant Maya was still alive somewhere. That thought lit a fire inside me. It was the only thing keeping my legs moving. I didn't let myself stop, not even to rest, because I knew if I paused for too long, my mind would unravel. So I gripped Mia's backpack tighter and kept going, even as my muscles screamed in pain. Frank's voice echoed in my head again and again. "If you didn't disappear, they'd take Maya." Every time I thought about it, I felt sick. It was one thing to believe my family had abandoned me out of anger or exhaustion, but it was another to realize they'd been force-cornered by people powerful enough to back up their threats. That thought alone kept hatred from swallowing me whole, because if Maya's life was at risk, I knew I'd do the exact same thing, but knowing that didn't mean I could forgive them. Not yet. Not when I was out here, stumbling through this nightmare alone. The trail sloped upward and curved. For a moment, I lost sight of the footprints I'd been following. Panic hit, sharp and cold. Then, near a stump, I found them again, deep boot prints, bigger than mine, pressed fresh into the dirt. I was starting to think the footprints might belong to Jake. That he'd gone ahead without me, and anger burned in my chest at the thought of him leaving me behind. But another part of me wondered if maybe he'd done it to pull whoever was watching us away from me. I didn't know which version to believe, and I didn't have time to figure it out. I pressed forward, my throat dry, until the trail opened into a small clearing. That's when I froze. Frank was standing there. He leaned against a splintered fence post, arms folded, staring at the ground like he was rehearsing what to say. When I reached him, my whole body went cold, but I kept walking until I was right in front of him. When he finally looked up, I saw it fear, not fear of what was happening, fear of me. And somehow, that was worse than all the lies. "Evelyn," he said, his voice rough and low. I lifted a hand to stop him. I didn't trust what might come out of my mouth if I let him keep talking. For a moment, the clearing was silent. Then he swallowed hard and said, "I didn't want it to happen like this." But his words felt empty, like they'd been practiced too many times. My jaw clenched. "You left me with nothing. No water, no way to call for help. You planned it." He flinched, as if saying it out loud was too much for him. "I planned to keep you safe," he whispered. "We had no choice. They said if we didn't do it, they'd hurt Maya. They showed us pictures what happens to people who don't cooperate." My chest tightened until it hurt to breathe. "You could have told me. We could have figured out another way." He shook his head, eyes dark. "They were listening, watching. Even if I tried, it would have been worse." Lisa wanted to run, but I stopped her. "I thought at least this way, you'd have a chance to survive." Something hot and bitter rose in my throat. "So you decided for me. You decided I'd wake up alone." He didn't argue. His shoulders sagged, and in just 2 days he looked 10 years older. "Where is Lisa? Where's Maya?" I demanded. He lifted a trembling hand and pointed toward the far edge of the clearing, where a narrow path disappeared into the trees. "They took Lisa deeper in. Maya's with them. They promised not to hurt her if we cooperated." My stomach turned. "You believe them?" His eyes closed. "I don't know what to believe anymore." My hands shook so badly I had to grip the strap of Maya's backpack just to stay steady. "Are you going to try to stop me?" I asked, my voice flat. When he opened his eyes, he looked at me like he barely recognized the person standing in front of him. "No," he said at last. "I'm going to help you. I can't keep pretending this is okay." He stepped closer, slow and careful, like he thought I might run. "There's a bunker ahead. That's where they're keeping the families, the ones they can use for leverage. Lisa's there. Maya's probably close." My pulse jumped. "And you know how to get inside?" He nodded. "I know the codes. They made me memorize them. But Evelyn," his voice cracked, "if we do this, there's no going back. They'll come after us." My chest felt like it was caving in, but I forced the words out. "I don't care." For a long moment he just stared at me. Then something in his face broke, like the last bit of strength he'd been clinging to finally snapped. He turned and started down the narrow path, and I followed on shaking legs. We walked in silence for what felt like forever until the trees parted, revealing a low concrete doorway almost hidden under brush. Frank crouched at the keypad mounted on the wall, sweat sliding down his neck even though his hand was steady. As he punched in a long string of numbers, the lock clicked open. He pulled the door wide, and a single light bulb flickered above a narrow hallway. Every part of me screamed to turn and run, but I couldn't not when Maya was on the other side. I stepped inside. Frank followed, the heavy door slamming shut behind us, the echo bouncing through the hall like a warning. "This way," he rasped. Our footsteps sounded too loud as we crept forward. When we reached a corner, I grabbed his arm. "If this is a trap," I whispered, "I swear to God it's not," he said quickly, looking straight into my eyes. "I want her safe as much as you do." He turned the corner, and we stopped in front of a metal door. He pressed his ear against it, listening. I heard muffled voices, one low and calm, the other high-pitched, broken, and shaking. I didn't need to guess it was Lisa. My throat closed. Frank reached for the handle, but I grabbed his wrist. "We do this together." He nodded, and then, together, we shoved the door open. Inside, Lisa sat on a crate, her hands tied, her face streaked with tears. She looked uphand when she saw me. She let out a sob that cracked the room in half. "Mom," Lisa whispered, her voice cracking. My heart nearly broke, but I forced myself to stay sharp. Behind her stood a man I didn't know, Talbroth, his face blank, like he'd been waiting for us. He slowly raised his hand, showing it was empty, but the calm in his eyes made me trust him even less. "You weren't supposed to come here," he said quietly. I stepped in front of Frank, my voice shaking. "Where is my granddaughter?" The man tilted his head toward the door behind him. "She's safe, for now." My blood went cold. "Let her go." He didn't move. "This isn't about you, Mrs. Carter. It's about debts being paid. Your husband was one of them." I spun to Frank, my stomach dropping. "What is he talking about?" Frank's voice was barely a whisper. "I owed them money, a lot. I thought I could pay it back before they acted, but they decided Lisa and Maya were leverage. They said if I didn't cooperate, they'd make sure you disappeared, permanently." My vision blurred with rage. "So you let them use our family as collateral?" He nodded, tears sliding down his face. "I'm sorry," he choked. Something inside me snapped. The man shifted his weight, and before I could think, I grabbed a metal pole leaning against the wall and swung it hard at his knee. He went down with a grunt. Frank lunged forward to untie Lisa, who collapsed into his arms, sobbing. I spun toward the door the man had pointed to, yanked it open, and there she was, Maya. She sat on a cot, clutching her doll. Her wide eyes met mine, and then she launched herself into my arms. I hugged her so tight my chest ached, my heart breaking and mending at the same time. Behind me, Lisa was crying so hard she could barely breathe. I turned to Frank, my voice steady for the first time in days. "We're leaving, all of us." The man on the floor groaned but didn't try to stop us. I pushed Lisa and Maya toward the hall, Frank following close behind. When we stepped out into the clearing, something inside me broke free. For the first time, I stopped waiting for someone else to save me. We moved fast through the trees. I held Maya against my side, her little arms locked around my waist, her doll squeezed so tightly her knuckles turned white. Fury burned through me that anyone had dared to use her as a pawn. Frank kept glancing back, expecting men to burst out of the shadows, but I didn't look. I'd wasted enough time doubting myself. Now, every part of me was focused on one thing: my family, out alive. Lisa stumbled more than once, her legs weak and shaking. Finally, I grabbed her shoulder. "You have to stay with me," I told her, my voice sharper than I meant. She nodded quickly, face streaked with tears and dirt, and kept moving. We pushed forward until Frank said the path would lead to a service road 2 miles north. None of us spoke. We didn't dare. It felt like even a single word might shatter the fragile thread holding us together. At last, the trees thinned, and I saw the jagged edge of asphalt up ahead. My legs nearly gave out. I swallowed the sob rising in my throat and squeezed Maya's shoulder. "Almost there," I whispered, more to myself than to her. Frank moved ahead, scanned the road, then waved us forward. When we stepped onto the cracked pavement, the silence was deafening. I scanned left and right, bracing for headlights, for voices, but the road was empty. "We follow this," Frank said quietly. "It'll take us to the ranger station, if we keep north." I didn't answer. I just started walking, Maya pressed to my side, Lisa behind me. Every few minutes I glanced back at her. She looked exhausted, her eyes locked on Maya like she couldn't bear to look anywhere else. But she kept moving. We all did. The farther we walked from that bunker, the clearer my head became. Everything I had been pushing down came rushing back, all at once. I thought about Frank's voice on that recording, how he said he'd tried. I pictured him standing in that clearing, waiting for me, pointing at the bunker like he was finally done running from the truth. Then I remembered Lisa's face when she saw me, how she whispered "Mom," like she wasn't sure I was really standing there. My chest hurt in a way I couldn't even put into words. I knew then that nothing in our lives would ever be the same. We walked for what felt like forever until the ranger station appeared around a bend. The moment I saw the faded sign out front, my knees almost gave out. Frank grabbed my arm before I collapsed, and this time I didn't have the strength to push him away. Cole came out onto the porch as soon as he spotted us. His eyes widened at the sight of us together, but he didn't say a thing. He just opened the door and let us in. Inside, I led Maya to a chair and crouched down in front of her. "You're safe now," I told her, looking straight into her eyes. "Do you hear me? You're safe." She nodded, her lip trembling, and lifted her little hand to my face. I had to fight hard to keep from crying right then. Cole gave us water and started calling for backup, speaking in a quiet voice about needing statements. I barely paid attention. My eyes stayed glued to Maya, and every time she blinked, I reminded myself she was real, not another cruel trick. After a while, Frank stood by the window, his shoulders sagging, while Lisa slid down against the wall, covering her face with both hands. I could hear her broken breathing, but she said nothing. I knew deep down that no matter what happened next, nothing could erase the damage that had been done. Still, I also knew the choice of what came after would be mine. When Cole hung up, he told me help was on the way, an ambulance, law enforcement. He said we'd be safe there until they arrived. I nodded, but inside I already knew I wasn't leaving my future in anyone else's hands. Slowly, I stood, every bruise, screaming, and locked eyes with Frank. My voice came out calm. To calm, when this is over, you're leaving my house. Both of you. Lisa's head snapped up, her eyes red and wet. Mom, she started, but I raised my hand to stop her. I don't care why you did it. You left me out there alone. You lied, and I won't spend another day pretending I can forgive that. Frank swallowed hard and asked, "Where will we go?" I shook my head. That's not my problem anymore. The room went still. Then Lisa broke, sobbing so hard her whole body shook. I turned away, couldn't stand to watch her fall apart. Maya reached for my hand, and I held it tight. That was enough. She was here. When the sirens finally drew close, a strange calm washed over me. The officers asked their questions. EMTs checked Maya and Lisa, and everything blurred together. When a deputy asked if I needed treatment, I shook my head. "I just want to go home," I whispered. Eventually, they cleared us to leave. On the porch, Cole stopped me and said, "I'm sorry for everything you've been through." I nodded, because I didn't have words. Outside, they offered us rides. I looked at Lisa, clutching Maya's hand like it was her lifeline. "You can ride with them," I told her. "When you get back, I want you to start packing." She opened her mouth to argue but must have seen my face. She just nodded, closing her eyes. Frank stayed silent, climbing into another vehicle like he already knew this was the end. Only when they were gone did I let myself breathe. A deputy offered me a hand into the cruiser, but I shook my head. "I'm fine. I've been fine on my own." The ride back was quiet. Each bump in the road felt like it shook loose another piece of the woman I had been before all this. But instead of grief, I felt something closer to relief. When we pulled up to my house, I stepped out without waiting for help, carrying Maya's little backpack and my own bag. I unlocked the door, walked inside, and went straight to the living room window. I pulled the curtains wide open. No more hiding, no more pretending, just me and the truth. I set the bags down and turned. Maya was standing in the doorway, watching me carefully. "Come here," I said softly. She walked into my arms, and I held her close. "We're going to be okay," I whispered into her hair, and for the first time in days, I actually believed it. That's today's story. If it touched you, leave a like and subscribe. And don't forget, share your own life lesson in the comments below.